Hello there. As we find ourselves in this very real situation, I just wanted to start this video by sending you some love, particularly to the older portion of my audience who currently have every right to be feeling concerned, but also to everybody else as well, because especially as we start to feel the impact of restrictions and the real effect on the economy as well. This last week has been terrible for my business as money is just disappearing out of the pipeline. And I think for everybody, the next few weeks or months ahead could be really challenging. It's important to keep perspective though, and to try and stay positive. And moving forward over these next few weeks or months, it seems like watching YouTube and doing landscape photography is still something that's going to be achievable. So I'm going to be doubling down on that and sharing it with you. There'll be all the detailed and in-depth tutorial content on the Raw Room, where you can now get a 7-day free trial. I'll put a link down below for that. And then on YouTube, I'll be doing my best to keep that inspirational content coming, to provide that escape and retreat that I think over the next little while we all might need very, very much. So in this video, I'm going to take you on a journey through the seasons and around the UK. You may have seen some of it before, but it still provides a lot of value as the retreat of landscape photography becomes more important than ever. Hello and welcome to another day of landscape photography. I'm kicking off with a big walk in the Lake District, getting up nice and high to the top of a mountain. Now every time I do that, starting at base level with huge mountains behind me like that, I always get lulled into a false sense of security just as the walk up, the hike up is about to start. Photography wise though, today it is a beautiful day. I've got high pressure, not much wind, which is always beautiful in the Lake District. Quite blue skies, so I'm hoping for a bit of cloud later on. But we're gonna stay, I'm out with Paddy again today, we're gonna stay at the top of Great Gable for sunset and hike back down in the dark. So it's going to be one of those days, I think, where everything happens right at the last minute. So, got a good hike up there, getting that fitness going through the new year. So, I would really love it if you were to come with me. Let's go. Getting out and about at this time of year is good because the sun stays really low in the sky, so you've got good quality of light for photography all day long, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. But in the Lake District, especially when you've got some clear skies, it means that the shadows cast by the mountain into the landscape create a very high contrast scenario. So I'm just not a very big fan of that. They still make nice shots, don't get me wrong, but in terms of top quality images, they're just not what I'm looking for. So that's why I think once I get to the top, that sun comes down, get that slightly warmer light, it's all gonna happen at the end. So I'm at the top and it feels good because that was an exceptionally difficult climb, but I have some 360 degree views, a bit dodgy where I'm stood, all the way around, and it is just absolutely incredible up here. I don't think I'm overstating it to say that walking in the mountains does not get any better than this. It's a beautiful winter's day. There's nobody on the top of this mountain except us. It's sunny. It's looking like there's going to be a good sunset, and there is not a breath of wind. It's been hard earned getting up here, but the sense of well-being is just amazing. Just fantastic. I'm lost for words. So I'm going to have something to eat, find some compositions, and then just hope that the cloud that we've got at the moment hangs around and we should be getting a really interesting sunset. I'm tired, but it was worth it. Yes. As is often the way in places like this, as I make my way over this very craggy top of the mountain, is that when you come to a spot like this, which is exceptionally beautiful all around me, it's far from straightforward to bring that 360 3D world down into a really interesting image. And it's not easy, and it's not obvious either, and it's certainly nothing particularly obvious today, except what is pretty much behind me there, which is looking down towards vast water and towards the sea and towards the coast, and that's pretty much where the sun is going to be setting as well. There's also some really nice cloud in front of me there as well, so I think that's going to be the spot. I'm just having a little scout around on the top of the hill here, on top of the mountain, while I'm capturing a time lapse, and it's so cold. Looking all around, there's so much contrast. Like, look at just behind me here, so much contrast. And also the top of this mountain is it's like quite a wide expanse. So if you wanted to include any foreground, there'd be a lot of it before you got to the main subject or focal point in the distance. For example, the lake behind me there. But I do really like this rock and the moss, which is covered in ice, and the frozen grass and the frozen moss look beautiful and white and interesting, especially as that golden light is hitting it as well. But it's difficult, and I can't really figure out a way in how to bring it down into an image. I'm just going to sit down because it was hard getting up here. So I think this way is going to be the way to do it. Waiting for the right moment in the light and just try and make it into something stunning, because there's hardly any wind, so vast water is looking very still, very beautiful, and I think there's going to be some really nice colour in the sky as well, so that's going to be what I go for. Now, secondly, I have an image behind me here, and I'm just going to shoot it again if I can operate the camera and, operate this camera and my tripod at the same time. There we go. Sorry about that. Right, back over this way, I have the pink in the sky, and it just looks incredible. I then have the three mountains there. I've got Great End and the two other peaks behind that. And we can see down towards, I think it's Stickle Tarn. Those mountains are now in shadow, but they're a really beautiful yellowy, sort of orange and green colour. And it's moody compared to that pink sky. You then have the icy tops of those mountains as well. And it looks beautiful, actually. Let me take a look at that. I've gone for F11, 1/6 of a second, ISO 100, 2-second time. Let's do it again. Bracketed images, 2 stops either side. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. There's a lot, because there is still some light coming from over where the sun is. There's some really different tones in the landscape below me that are really interesting. With that pink sky in there as well, that it could work as an image. But I also shot one over there, or in the distance to the sea, with some windmills. So it's all going on. I think if we take these images back into post-processing now, we could make something really good. just whilst I'm here at 900 metres with the prospect of a walk back down in the dark, I'm just not sure. I want to get them on the big screen, edit them, and I reckon we'll have something pretty decent. So I'm going to pack my bag up now and get back down because I want to get home and get these pictures into Lightroom and see if we can make something of it. But overall, an absolutely fantastic day. Hard walk, but a good walk, good amount of exercise, stunning views, no wind at 900 metres in the Lake District. It really doesn't get any better than this. It doesn't, not when you're walking in the Lake District. It could be a bit warmer, but I quite like it when it's cold. Good day, very good day. So brilliant day up in the mountains and now trekking back down in the dark off Great Gable. Great Gable, great fun. Okay, so the hike out into this glen has just been absolutely worth it because just look at this stunning scene behind me. I've stumbled across this waterfall and it's just so impressive. It's so impressive and it's just absolutely beautiful as it sort of snakes its way up to Goat Fell in the distance there. And my goodness, are those mountains looking extraordinary as well. It's such a striking mountain anyway because of its very direct triangular shape. And then you've got some of those crags over to the right-hand side of it as well, just adding a lot of drama to this scene. It also rained really heavily overnight, and I think some of that must have fallen as a bit of snow, or some of it's turned to ice on top of the fells because it's just looking beautiful with just that little sprinkling of white on the top of those fells. Pretty much that's the sort of mood and the style I want to capture. It's exceptionally windy, so I'm having to keep my back turned to the wind so you can hear me, and also the noise of the waterfall is very, very impressive as well. I've played around with a few compositions so far, and I've settled, although I'll probably experiment a bit more, but I've settled for the moment on a vertical shot because I really like this large stone or massive stone here which has some part of the water coming down it. The main part of the waterfall is then just here, and that kind of winds its way up several little falls. Then it goes a bit flatter before we go up to Goat Fell in the distance. I just really like the curve of the stream here. So I've gone for a relatively wide angle. I'm at 35mm on the vertical, and this pool here at the bottom starts down in the left-hand side of the image, and then it just works its way around and up through that waterfall, really strong foreground interest. And then it works its way up to Goat Fell in the distance there, which is intermittently being covered in cloud. It's covered in cloud at the moment, so I will capture it like that. Let's just do that now because I'm all set. But it also, I'm hoping that it will clear again. It was clear when I first got here. I hope it does clear up so I can get it both ways, but having it shrouded in cloud could be really interesting. But I do also want to capture it without the cloud and then see which is best. So for this shot, if I can just turn into the wind for a minute, I want to smooth out that water a little bit. I've tried it without, and I just don't like the frozen waterfall look. So I've gone for the 6-stop filter, just so I can still compose through the live view. What that will also do is, with that cloud that is around the top of the fell, it will just smooth that out a little bit and add a slightly ethereal feel to it, as well as in the water. I'm going to turn back around because that water's quite noisy. Settings wise, with that 6-stop filter on, I'm at f11. That's enough to get sharpness from back to front in this case because I'm not too close to that foreground. And that's giving me, at ISO 100, a shutter speed of 8 seconds, which is just perfect for smoothing out that water and providing a little bit of movement in that cloud because it is moving really, really quickly. So I've got the 2-second timer on, I'm composed, I'm really happy with the composition. that cloud is moving around so beautifully up there, so I'm going to capture it again. 2-second timer. There we go. 8 seconds later, we'll have a shot. But I'll have a little play around. I will probably get down here actually and shoot it a little bit closer, get a sort of horizontal shot as well, just because I'm here, so I might as well. But I'm not sure which I'm going to like best. I can't talk you through that one because it's just going to be too noisy down there. But I'll put both images up for you to see now. The weather is just so changeable. I'm getting battered with snow. I found a little break in this snow and cloud, and there's a weather front coming from over there. I'm about to get blasted again. For this shot though, I've gone to ISO 50, which is below the base ISO. It's the low mode. I just want to test out how good it is and see whether it's usable. And again, we'll see that when we take the pictures back into post-processing. But for this one, it started snowing again. I'm just going to get a shot with it snowing actually, because that's looking really nice. I'm just going to get in there. I'm focused already, manual focused again, because the autofocus isn't working. 2-second timer, snap that. That is a dramatic image. I'm just going to go again because the top of the hill is now getting covered in snow, and it's going out of my vision, and it's just looking really interesting. Some of the snow is now starting to hit the trees as well. It's coming for us any second now. That's at f11, 1/30th of a second. What I like about this camera particularly is it's just so easy to set up. The gap in the weather, just bang, it's on there. Everything's there with one hand, even when it's on the tripod. Get the screen's decent. For me though, it's just going to be about the image quality as it starts to snow. So the hill, Roseberry Topping, is now disappeared. We're getting snow in our faces, in the camera's face as well. This camera is weather sealed. I have definitely put that to the test today. It got wet at the beach earlier. It's getting snowed on now. It's very wet snow, as you might see on the front of that camera. It's windy, I'm cold, but I'm loving it. I think it's time to pack up now and call it a day. We're getting very much covered in snow. Can you still see me? I am now well into golden hour up here on the North York Moors, which is one of my favourite places in the whole world to photograph. And right now I am composed using this beautiful lone tree here. And some of you might know that I've been working on a little project to try and tell the story of the British moors during the winter. Now it is officially still winter right now, but it is feeling very spring-like today. But the heather here has not yet flowered, and that's kind of what I want. It may not be a portfolio grade image, but I think this project, once it comes together and I'll link the images together in a project, they're going to be, or I'm hoping they're going to be really good and tell a really nice story of these frankly stunning moors. They're so quiet, they're so peaceful on a beautiful afternoon like today, or even when it's really bad weather. They're just fantastic. If you haven't visited, you really need to. Anyway, I've got the camera low down, so I'm looking along the surface of that heather. I'm at f8 because I don't mind if some of the heather is blurred in the foreground. It's just going to lead me into that sharper area right on that tree. I've got the tree low down in the image, slightly more towards the centre, and then I'm just hoping for an absolutely fantastic sunset, which is possible because I've got some of the beautiful warm light at the moment hitting the tree. I'm in at about 60 millimeters from this distance. I'm going to bracket the images so I get some detail in the tree and I still get the detail in the sky behind as well. The perfect time to shoot this image is going to be just as the sun is hitting the horizon. So I get that nice warm light on the tree, but then I also get, hopefully, some orange and some yellow in these high altitude clouds behind me. I'm hoping that aeroplane contrail will have disappeared by the time it comes to shoot. But yeah, what a fantastic way to end this day. It's so still, it's so peaceful. So I'm just going to enjoy it for a moment until sunset. So I think we're at just the right time now. The wind has got up a little bit. The sun is just about to set. Such a beautiful evening. I'm going to take one last image. I've actually got a fire over here. You might have seen that on the drone footage. It's blowing the smoke now right across behind the tree. That might improve things. It might not. But wow, I'm just loving it up here. I'm just getting excited. Yeah, straightforward shot, bracketed, f8, 1/30th of a second, 2 stops either side, ISO 100, and I'll edit that together later on. So I'll show you the image in a minute, but please do go to firstmanphotography.com/masterclass. I'll put a link down below for you as well to check that out, and I'll see you very, very soon. So I've just woken up from a very cosy night's sleep, and it is looking particularly spectacular this morning. We've got some really thin mist, which is just adding a real beautiful mood to the morning. I've got some colour starting to streak across the sky now. There's a bit of colour over there, so I'm going to quickly gather all my gear together and get the camera out, because I don't think this is going to last long, but it's looking fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. Wow, I'm at the moment shooting the very same composition that I took last night, because the pinks that are streaking across the sky are just fantastic. So it would be rude not to. I've got just a thin mist, like I was saying, but I can see through it really nicely, but it's just adding some drama and mood into the distant mountains there. And it's breathtaking. There's a small amount of wind, but otherwise it's not particularly cold either. So it's just a fantastic morning that's just made camping out so worth it. And I think that pink's just getting even better. So same composition as last night, so I'm not going to talk through it again, but f11, I'm at a 1/6 of a second, half a second, ISO 100, and I'm still bracketing 2 stops either side. The pinks just look incredible. Wow. Let's have a look at that. Oh, this is so nice. I'm set up for another shot, and this is an absolutely classic spot for photographing the bluebells in North Yorkshire, looking over the bluebells towards Rosebery Topping. I've actually never shot it before, but it is one of those absolutely classic, epic, grade A spots. Everybody shoots here. So I thought the bluebells are looking pretty good this year, so I'll come and shoot it using this phone. With this time, I've got the wide angle lens attached. Now, the phone generally has a range. This phone has a range of about 24 to 50, I think, with the lenses, something like that. But by attaching this lens here, it gives you 35mm equivalent of 16mm. So sort of that classic landscape photography wide angle, essentially. So I thought this was a great spot to do it. It's also going to test out the actual abilities of the phone as well, because there's a lot of shrubbery and detail in the trees, and then you've got the colour. It's not the ideal weather, but there is a bit of sun starting to poke through. This will look a lot better, I think, if I do get a bit of sun, but there is a little bit of rain going on, so there's lots of drama going on. So I think it's going to be a good image regardless of what happens. So I'm using this little sort of tripod mount for my phone, very cheap from off Amazon, and then just have the lens attached to the phone. So let's unlock the phone and I'll talk you through the composition. So I have the tripod down pretty low to the ground because I want to utilise this wide angle. And a good way of utilising a wide angle lens in landscape photography is to get it down low, to get some foreground interest and fill your frame essentially with that foreground interest. And in this case, the foreground interest is stunning. These bluebells are just beautiful. They're just perfect at the moment. The colour's perfect. They're not sort of starting to sag or anything like that. They just look really healthy and really, really good. So I've got some of them just down in front of me here that are in the foreground of the shot. I've then got the tree just there, which is looking great. If that gets some sunlight on it, it will look even better. I've got the field off to the right with the kind of fence line and the edge of the bluebells just kind of leading you round from the right-hand side of the image. Everything's then shaped nicely up to roseberry topping. I've got some nice detail in those clouds as well, although it is overcast. But it's just looking great. I've got some nice greens in there. I love those spring greens. Not a massive fan of it in the rest of the year, the colour green, but in spring I do really like it. Let's get into this phone. I'm in the Lightroom app again because that allows me to shoot in RAW essentially on the phone. So I'm going to start off by just going into the professional mode or the full manual mode and just adjust the composition a bit to get exactly what I want. That's looking great. I'm going to go ISO up to the minimum, which is 25 for this phone, and then I'm just going to adjust the shutter speed. You don't adjust the aperture on this phone because the lens is so small that the aperture is just locked all the time. So you only need to worry about shutter speed and ISO. So it's actually really, really easy. Just using the screen and using the histogram just to about 1/500th, I think. Yeah, that gives me a fairly nice balance. There's some really nice drama in those clouds. I'm going to pop the 2-second timer on as well. That's already on. And then just hit the 2-second timer. 1, 2, bang. There we go. It's actually a really almost liberating way to shoot. Let's have a look at that. There's no click, there's no noise. It's so small, it's light. And that, I just want to go into here. Let me just spin that around. I'm just going to zoom in and have a look at some of that detail. It'll be really interesting to edit that. So what we're going to do is edit that on the iPad right now, because that's the beauty of Lightroom Mobile, is we can shoot and then edit on the iPad or a bigger screen or on your computer at home straight away. So I'm going to just spend the time in this stunning environment and do my editing out and about. So I've arrived and it's been a long journey. It's taken me about 36 hours to get to this spot. But my goodness, has it been worth it? Just take a look at this scene behind me here. It's just absolutely incredible. I know I say those words a lot, but here at the very north tip of Finland, in the Arctic Circle, with the frozen sea still, this is just simply amazing. One of the most beautiful sights I think I've ever seen. It's surreal, it's calm, it's a bit windy, but I don't mind. It's a little bit cold, even coming towards the middle of May, but I don't mind. It's just fantastic. It's a very, very nice moment that has just made all the effort worthwhile. It's been an adventure, it's been difficult at times, but my goodness, just look at this. I'm right at the north tip of Finland at the moment. You've got the biggest mountain in Finland just there. You've got Sweden just across the water behind me there. And then off just in that little gap in the hills there is Norway. So it's a fantastic spot in the Nordics, right high up in the Arctic Circle. What I'm going to do is, just from this very spot, I have found what I think will be 3 really nice compositions that are going to work well together. They'll be edited similar, and I'm going to take them and combine them and print them into a piece of work which will just make this trip worthwhile. It will tell the story of this area, and I think it'll be pretty good. So I am actually set up for my first shot. I have the Canon 16 to 35mm lens on there, and I am out, or I'm at 24mm actually. So I just want to capture this impressive scene behind me, which just looks fantastic at the moment. The light is quite flat, but it's beautiful light. But over in the distance there, I've actually got some sun pushing its way through the clouds to brighten that background up a bit. The mountains look stunning with that sort of melting snow just on the peaks still. We've then got the frozen sea, which looks great, coming down into these rocks here. So that is the composition pretty much. We've got the rocks in the foreground, that big rock there towards the right-hand side of the frame, then got all these little rocks in the foreground. With that nice wide angle, we'll get all of that detail. And then I've got the mountains in the background. And on a shot like this normally, you sometimes get a midground that just is quite plain, if it's just plain water. But because I have the edge of the ice just here, which is composed into the center of my frame, which acts as the midground of the image, you've got that kind of layered detail in that ice, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. Settings-wise, I have played around with a circular polarizer on the front of the lens, but I actually like the reflection because it kind of balances the exposure and balances the image actually in terms of brightness from the foreground. Because when I'm using the polarizer, it sees through that glare and it just looks too dark. So I actually quite like the completely bright image from top to bottom. What I am going to do though, I think, is put a 10-stop filter on. The only reason for that is to just smooth out a few of the very small ripples that are in the water in the foreground. Just so I've got that nice, surreal, calm mood. The clouds already look quite blurred because there's not much definition in them. So the filter isn't going to make any difference to that. The long exposure isn't going to make any difference to that, but it will affect the water in the foreground here. Okay, so let's put the filter on the front here. With this on, I'm going to need a 30-second exposure, so I don't need a timer or anything like that. I'm just going to ramp the shutter speed up to 30 seconds. There we go. The 2-second timer is on, so I'm ready to shoot. So we just need to wait 30 seconds, and then we'll take a look at that. Oh, that is just lovely. Absolutely lovely. It's a classic landscape shot. You've got that foreground interest, you've got the midground interest, and then you've got the stunning mountains in the background with the interesting light on them as well. One thing I love about this as well is that I've got Finland in there, I've got Norway in there, and I've got Sweden in there. So I've got 3 countries in one photograph. I'm not sure there are many other places in the world where you can do that. There's probably a few, but this is certainly a spectacular one. Yes. I love it when the effort pays off. It just makes it all worthwhile. There are times when it's on a knife edge when you're not sure it's going to work out, but when it does, yes. One of the things I'm fascinated to find out, and one of the things people talk about a lot to me, is what to look for when you first get into a landscape. I think some people find it difficult. I'm very interested to hear Charlie's thoughts on that.
I know this is an old, cinematographers always do that. And that's always a technique, really, to try and think about what is going to be excluded. And you know as well as I do that the exclusion of elements within the photograph play as big a part as the inclusion. In fact, I've got a little pet phrase, if you can bear this, which is attend and intend. Attend to everything, if I can remember it, and let everything attended to be either intended or not intended or accepted to be there.
Well.
And that sounds highfalutin, but in fact I think it's probably true. So omit the redundant. So what do I not like about this? An aluminium barn, or a barn with a nasty aluminium roof, one or two cars whizzing along the road, but the road is not really clear. So the story, the big player, the protagonist, is the tree and this limestone pavement, and trying to get a relationship between the two. And almost a secondary feature is the viaduct, which I think in a lot of photography is made primary. But this tree is the king, fairly wide angle. Light's flat, so that immediately makes me think monochrome. Colour is fairly muted palette, as they say. So it might be worth having a go. It's a long time since I've been here, Adam.
How long?
10, 12 years. Yep. Amazing, really. But it's still here, and people were here before me. Will it work today? It's not ideal. In fact, it's far from ideal. But what I think is so wonderful about landscape photography, and I know you would agree, is it's the pursuit. It's the having a go, isn't it? It's trying to make it work. And the drive that makes us want to do that.
Do you have any go-to things you do then when the light isn't as great as you would have hoped for? Or
in all honesty, I leave.
Do you?
I do. And one of the reasons I leave is because I was brought up with transparency film. And the only way you could retouch, which is what they used to do in those days, is turn it into a 10:8 tranny and then handheld retouching. So before Photoshop or anything. So we were of that school of having to get it right in camera. Mm-hmm. That's not to say, weren't we good? Of course not. Because now Photoshop and Lightroom and all of the other image post-production techniques are to my mind a continuation of your artistic interpretation of the scene. But we were brought up with a tranny, and if you didn't get it right in camera, that was kind of it. So you just used to have to come back, and that's what we did. And we couldn't make any changes of any kind, really. In the darkroom we could do a little bit, but if we're in colour, really difficult. Really, really difficult.
So say if you've travelled to another country or a long way and then you find flat light, are you patient knowing that you might go back there in 10 years' time? Or are you...
Good question. My name is Wait. Yeah. You gave me that one. You handed me that one on a plate. I, looking back on it, if I think I was doing a book on Yorkshire, I just would tick this one as to be returned, to be returned, to be returned to. Because the structure has got promise, great promise. So the relationships are strong. There's a horizontal line of the viaduct, obviously. The branch is not exactly horizontal, but there's a very strong relationship between the two. So it's sound. The relationships are sound. The positioning of the tree is sound. I think just about everything else about it I find very, very appealing. So it will absolutely come to life, and I'd like to immortalize it, to use that word, in the most complimentary light. And I've got another little phrase, if you can bear it: nature suspended in one of its most perfect performances. And that's what I think it deserves. And there will come a time, probably when you and I aren't here and we're somewhere else, when it just suddenly will become enlivened, and it'll be a very, very beautiful, magical moment. And I'd like to be here when that happens, but it isn't happening now. But what would be good would be for me to get a camera out, my old Hasselblad, and look through a 50mm lens and see whether that would be suitable, which I think it might be, so that then at least I'm prepped for when I come back.
Hello there, and you join me in Snowdonia today. Very windy, quite bright. Just making my way across this hill because we've seen some horses. They're quite beautiful. They have a mountain view behind them. And I'm just trying to get into a position where I'm not going to disturb them. But I can get a shot. I have the 7200 on the camera. And I'm out of sight at the moment. I'm just kind of getting a bit closer and make my way down this hill. And they're just beautiful. With that beautiful scene behind them. If I can get low enough here, I've got a bit of a shot now. I can just get down. I need to go vertical. Just zoom out a bit. Recompose. I just want to adjust the focus point a bit to get my composition right. Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice. I'd like to get a little bit further down, so I'm a bit more onto their level. I really don't want to disturb them though. They're just sitting there peacefully minding their own business. I'm visiting their space, so I don't want to intrude. I'm downwind from them, so they definitely won't be able to smell me. Hopefully, with the amount of wind there is as well, I'm not gonna disturb them too much with the noise I'm making. Just get a tiny bit closer down here. Take a perch on this rock. Oh, that's lovely. I'm getting down a bit lower and shoot through some of these reeds in the foreground. Oh, that's nice. That's the shot. They're posing for me really nicely now. Just to zoom out a little bit, to get some of that background in. Oh, lovely. I'm shooting through some of the reeds in the foreground that just add that nice little touch. If I remain here for a minute, it might come a little bit closer. But it's looking lovely. I've got the mountain in the background and a bit of the lake. They're so peaceful, just eating the grass. So they've moved on a bit, but if I can now just get behind a rock so they can't see me coming. I really don't want to disturb them. If I can get behind these rocks here, there's a little set of rocks there. I'm just going to make for that. I've left my bag quite a long way away now, which is not ideal, but hopefully no one will steal it. I'm going to get through here. Jagged rocks. So close to them. They're just over that little brow there. I'm just waiting for one of them to look up a bit now. Let's go vertical, I think. Get that shot. Oh, that's looking so nice. Settings wise, I'm at f4. 1/320th of a second to get that nice still shot. ISO 100 with the current light. I love this kind of combination of wildlife and landscape, and that's exactly what I've got here. How wild these horses are, I've got no idea. It knows I'm here now. I don't think I'm disturbing it though, he's just having a little look. He's gonna know I'm not bothering him and just get on with it. Yeah, he's quite happy with me here, I think now. Just being respectful. They're moving away now. It's made my composition not quite as good. I wish I knew something about them. I don't know anything about them though, but regardless, I don't think it matters. They're beautiful animals. Fantastic moment. Horses in the mountains, which I don't think I've ever had that before. Right, I haven't disturbed them. I'm going to take that as my moment just to back away and leave them to this beautiful landscape. That looks spot on. It's just got windy again, actually, so I want to wait for another calmer moment before I use that 6-stop filter, because I don't want that grass moving around. Oh, it's got really windy now. Really windy. Right, don't need to do anything different with the camera. I can just whack this on. I can focus. I can see what's happening with this filter on. No bother at all. Wah! Oh no, that gust of wind did it. Ugh. That was not good. That looks like it could be a dead camera. Look at all the water dripping off it. Oh no. No, that's not how I wanted this video to end. Not at all. Oh no. Get the card out because I don't want that to be destroyed. It's got a lot of important footage on it. Oh no, look at that. It's wet. Very wet. And all the footage I've filmed today. No. Thankfully, the microphone's still working. That was under the water as well. Well done, road. Look at that. The other side of it's still connected to me, so you can still see it kind of recording the sound, but it's not plugged into anything, so it's not actually recording. But I'm very pleased that isn't broken, because that's brand new, that is. Oh man, it's raining again. I'm on to the Canon 5D Mark IV to film now. I can't believe that just happened. I'm pretty sure that camera is dead. Right, let's have a look. I should bump the ISO up a little bit so you can see just how wet it is. It's still raining, but it's just soaked. Absolutely everywhere. I've taken the card out, so I think probably the footage that I've filmed already today will be okay. Let's have a look around the front. I mean, look at that lens. It's absolutely saturated. Whoa! I'm falling off the rock. Oh my God. Let's have a look at this. Focus. Look at that. So nasty. What a way to end the day, and I think that is my day ended now. I've still got this camera, my main camera. Thankfully, that didn't go in the drink because it was on this tripod, on the proper tripod. The 800D was on the travel tripod, and a sort of random gust of wind blew it into the water because it isn't strong enough to survive that wind like this camera was. Thankfully, I had the more expensive camera on it, so thing is, the more expensive camera probably would have survived that because it's weather sealed and it was only in there for a second. Can you believe it? I don't have enough money to buy a new camera. I need it to come back to life. Oh well. Oh well. So here we are at the top of Helm Crag. This is Lyle. You may have seen him in the background of various videos over the years. We've known each other since we were 3 years old. He was subscriber number 1. And we have come out together today because not so long ago, I crossed the 100,000 subscriber mark. And when you do that on YouTube, you probably know that you get a commemorative plaque. I'm not very good at celebrating my own successes, so I don't particularly want to put it up on my wall, but what I thought I would do is hike it to the top of a mountain and take a picture of it on the top of a mountain. So I think what we're going to do, or I am going to do, is climb to the top of the rock formation called the Lion and the Lamb to take a picture of it from up there. It's a bit dodgy though, isn't it?
I mean, I'm looking at it now and it looks fairly steep and a little bit hairy. There's a bit of wind, but I think you can do it.
I can do it.
You've got to celebrate the success.
It's like one of those terrible Instagram moments though, where people climb to ridiculous places and then
that's the end.
Yeah, that's the last bit. Yeah.
Let's hope not. But anyway, it's a good
But
way
you're going
to
to
go.
film it with a drone, aren't you? So
I'm going to film it with the drone. We'll get
if I fall, it'll be on camera. Yeah.
We'll get a few nice shots, and we'll see you when we're up there.
Cool. Right. This is it. That is the plaque with First Man Photography on it. So I'm going to climb up to the top of the lion. I think that is. Prop it on a rock and take a picture of it. Right, I'll take the camera. Right, here we go. Just adjust that. My mum is not going to like this when she watches it back. Not one bit. And there we are with a quite big drop down there. I mean, I do have some 360-degree views all the way around. And if you've been watching me for a long time, then that was something I used to say when I got to the top of these mountains. Right, let's try and find a spot. Whoa. I don't really want this to go off the edge. And I think, how's that? I think that could be. Okay. I hope this is worth it. Hello there, and you join me on a beautiful morning as we get straight into this review today of the Canon 90D. I'm just down straight away taking a photograph with the 90D because that's what my reviews are all about. I've got the tide coming in all around me. My leg just got wet, so I'm going to have to be quick, but I am set up for a shot with the Canon 90D on this tripod and just this fantastic coastal scene here this morning as the tide is coming in. A little bit nervous because I've got to be quick. For this shot, I'm just using some of this beautiful seaweed covered rock here. It's getting the sea washing over it. It's forming a perfect bit of foreground interest. And I then have that quite beautiful sunrise there in the distance with those lovely colours in it, those oranges, those pinks, those yellows, and some blue as well. And it's just going to make a fantastic seascape to start the day. Right, let's talk a little bit about the camera because this is primarily a landscape photography review, although we are going to go and photograph some birds because I think this is going to be great for wildlife as well. Right, let me just take a knee. Probably going to end up getting quite wet, but whoa. So for this shot, I have a filter on, just a 6-stop filter just to smooth out a little bit of that water. I'm then at f11 so I can get everything in focus in the foreground and in the distance, and then I'm at ISO 100. I'm bracketing as well because I'm not using any ND grads. I'm just using that 6-stop filter, and that's going to let me get that whole dynamic range in the scene. We might talk a little bit more about the dynamic range of the camera later, but for this case I'm using bracketing, so I'm at a middle exposure of 4 seconds actually, so it's quite a long exposure really, which is going to give us that really smooth water but still have some of the detail as it washes over those rocks. So I've got it on the 2-second timer. I'm bracketing. There we go. It's just going to take a few seconds to do that exposure and then we'll take a look. That's now done, so I'm finished exposing. Let's just take a quick look at that. I'm probably going to get quite wet down by these rocks and this tide coming in. Let's have a look. Yeah, I mean, that is really nice, really beautiful. I've got that smooth water over those rocks. I haven't managed to zoom into the detail yet. I'll do that when I'm back in a safer spot, but for my first landscape shot with the Canon 90D, I'm very encouraged. That's looking great. This is what it's all about for me. If you're not a regular viewer of my videos, this is what I do. Getting out, doing landscape photography in these fantastic locations because it's just so much fun. It's so beautiful and it makes you feel great. Yes, it's difficult getting out of bed early for these sunrises, but when you get here, the fresh sea air, the beautiful conditions, it just makes it all worthwhile. So I'm set up for my first shot of the day and I just have this fantastic scene behind me. I'm focusing mostly on that tree, that big tree just behind me there. That's the main focal point of this image. However, I have a lot more going on. I've got this frozen pond with just catching the colour that's in the sky at the moment with these interesting clouds, just reflecting that back at me with the beautiful detail of that ice. Talking of ice as well, I then have these reeds in the foreground and they've just got, let me just take this twig here, just this beautiful bit of ice frozen to it on this really cold but really still morning, and it's just making for just a fantastic scene that I'm really excited about. It's not particularly complicated, it's quite a flat landscape, but with those trees to give it some elevation, I think it's going to be something really quite nice and hopefully worthy of a print a bit later down the line. I have the camera fairly low down at the moment because the tree's quite tall and I want to get some of these reeds in, so I've had to lower my perspective so I can then angle up a bit more to get some of the reeds and then all that tree, which is actually quite tall. I want to get the whole thing in. We're just a little way before sunrise still, but because it's quite a clear day over that way where the sun is rising, there's actually some really beautiful light and it's actually already quite bright, particularly because everything's quite white with that ice. It's reflecting a lot of light around and it's just actually a fantastic light. So with the camera down low, I've got some of the reeds that you can see in the foreground here. I'm going on a horizontal at the moment. I may try it on the vertical as well. I'm cutting this bush out just here, the one there, and then I'm trying to keep the trees to the right-hand side of the main tree out as much as possible. I think it's working quite nicely for a composition. It's all about that ice, actually. If it wasn't for that, I don't think this would be particularly interesting, or it would actually have a very different tonal type colour. But it just has that wintry feel to the morning, even though we're still in the autumn. And I'm liking it a lot. So settings-wise, I am bracketing just to be safe. I don't really need to, because I think I'm exposed pretty perfectly actually at f11, 1/4 of a second, or 1/4 of a second, and ISO 100. I'm focusing on that main tree. That's going to give me the composition that I want pretty much. I'm on the 2-second timer. I'm ready to shoot. There's a bit of colour, a bit of pink in the sky, which I think is going to make it really nice. Yeah, I mean, it's just popped up already. It isn't the sort of image that has that instant wow factor like a mountainous scene would. But it's the kind of scene that if you look at it for an amount of time, you study it when you're looking at the photograph, there's lots of detail and interest in there. And shape. And I've got that tree right on the rule of thirds, which I think works really well for the composition. The sort of top edge of it, almost at the top, sort of 5th portion of it is right on the rule of thirds cross mark as well. So, yeah, just really nice. It's going to be, I'm happy with that image. I'll show you that in a second, but I think once the sun comes up as well and catches some of this ice with that beautiful golden light, it could be quite incredible. So I'm going to go for a little explore around now and try and find something that's going to suit the sunlight when that comes up. What a fantastic morning. So still, not a breath of wind. I love mornings like this. They are absolutely perfect for photography. Even though it's quite clear, it means that the time we have available to do photography with the best light and best conditions is brief, because this ice will melt away pretty quickly as well. This is why I do it though. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a fantastic thing, Durdle Door. Really impressive. The beach is really steep, so the waves are actually quite severe and quite loud, as well as you can probably hear. For the shots, I have the circular polarizer and a 6-stop filter. Now what the 6-stop filter is letting me do is just to smooth that water out a little bit. It's giving me an exposure time of about 13 seconds, which is great because there isn't really any wind today, so in that 13 seconds, I'm hardly going to see any movement in the clouds. So the clouds are going to be nice and sort of sharp because they're quite interesting. There's nice detail in there, but I'm going to get a nice smooth bit of water. For the composition, what I'm doing is using the curvature of the shoreline, basically, to where the water is coming in, foaming up. I want that to be the leading line into my image that takes you round towards Durdle Door. Now, in order to do that, that's where the long exposure also helps. But I've got to get the timing right because I essentially want the wave or the foam to come out the bottom corner of the image. So I need to wait for that shoreline to froth a bit more, a bigger wave to come in, and then get the timing right. And so far I haven't done that. The sun is now pushing through, a little bit more light, which is nice as well. The colour of the water is just fantastic, absolutely beautiful. I initially planned for this to be a black and white shot, but with the colour of that water, I'm now not sure. And the detail in the sky as well is really nice. There's a lot of blue tones in that sky. There's a good wave coming in now. 2-second timer. Just wait for 15 seconds, but it's absolutely beautiful here. Look at those cliffs behind me as well. Just absolutely fantastic. Let's have a look at that. And that's just beautiful. It's an absolutely classic scene. If you've not seen this photograph before, then I'm not quite sure where you've been, but Durdle Door, fantastic. And I'm glad I've now got an image of it. So, one last thing to do when you are lacking in inspiration is to print your work. I've been talking about it with a few fellow photographers over the last few days, but printing is just so special. And when you get that piece of work produced in your hands and we're thinking about the print when we're here in the field, it's just a fantastic thing when that final piece of work comes to life. You get to hold it, you get to look at it, and it's just about you and that the link between the visualization that you had at the start and that final print. What we do with all this stuff in the middle, I've said before, doesn't really matter. How you do it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so we're going to go back and do that. We're going to go back to the studio, and then we'll produce that final print and be interested to see if I think black and white or colour is best. So I will see you after a 5.5 hour drive back up north. So I will save you from that boring moment.